Welcome everybody to this webinar, Implementing Greener Product Innovation, How to Get Started Using Sustainable Minds Cloud Software in Our Service Programs. My name is Joep Meyer and I'm the LCA Technical Expert at Sustainable Minds. I'm a chemist and life cycle assessment expert by training, and I spent most of my career in helping organizations with product development, R&D, measuring environmental performance, and helping with standardization efforts in the field within organizations like ISO, ASTM, and the US Green Building Council. Now, a few notes on this webinar. To keep things moving and to avoid confusion, we've muted all your microphones, and they will remain muted throughout this webinar. But that doesn't mean you can't communicate with us. You can send us questions. Please type it into the Send Question to Staff in the chat pane during the presentation. We're capturing all your questions. We'll try to address them during the Q&A at the end, but we'll follow up as needed afterwards. So today I want to talk to you about our cloud software. I'm going to give you a demo and talk about the services that we sell the most to customers in the field. I want to talk a little bit about why we got started at Sustainable Minds, about our mission and how we work with different people. We're going to let those people talk for a little bit. Well, I will do the talking, but we'll talk about the business drivers that they share with us once they said, well, we're ready to go work with you and for this and this reason. A lot of companies and a lot of people are trying to operationalize environmental performance and environmental performance metrics. I want to spend a few minutes on how we look at that and then dive into what we call our Getting Started programs for suitable for different people in different parts of the organization, but usually they're all with a very small time period and manageable budget, so you can get started on your journey in making greener products. Then I want to show you a demo. We'll go online, go into the software, we'll build a new project, very simple one, just to get you comfortable with the environment. And I'll show you an example of a completed project in Sustainable Minds, and then we'll go over several custom use cases where we show you how other customers are using Sustainable Minds. And perhaps we have some time for a few questions. We're glad to say that we see ourselves, and we're hearing it from other people as well, that we are an industry thought leader. Some functionality that we've developed over the years we see pop up in different parts of the industry, and we take that as a compliment. You see here at the right some apps that can be installed into your design software that you can use for a limited a number of environmental impact categories, and usually for smaller increments in terms of optimization when you're almost done with your design. And we're building more functionality. It's a fun place to be, very moving place to be, and it's good to associate with students, customers, all trying to wrap their heads around what a greener means. And that's exactly what we're trying to do at Sustainable Minds. We want to empower you and your organization to operationalize what we refer to as greener. So how can we help you to operationalize environmental performance metrics into your mainstream product development and manufacturing? And at Sustainable Minds, we're unique in a way that we combine two things. We focus a lot on how to be innovative, how you can use eco-design strategies to create new ideas, to give you ideas on making products greener, and then combine it with life cycle assessment, LCA, which is a way to quantify environmental performance, so you can get the metrics and measurement associated with those eco-design strategies, so you can see which ones are actually working, which ones are not, and the ones that work will end up in your final design. And if you do that, you can make truly greener products. Another way of looking at this, if you bring the innovation, then we'll bring you a way to measure and monitor so that you can get to truly greener products. Now, we're doing that for a lot of people. A lot of people are using our software. On the left, you see an overview of manufacturers. Lots of different product categories. I'm sure you recognize some of these names here. Some consumer technology, Motorola, large industry equipment like Caterpillar, faucets and plumbing like Toto and Masco, a whole range of different products there. And the more people we work with, the more dedicated and designated our database is. And it's growing with our user base. So the more users we have, the bigger our database grows. We also work with what we call product consultancies at the right bottom of this slide. These are companies that you can hire to do your design for you. And they're integrating eco-design strategies using life cycle assessment by using our software, Sustainable Minds, in their projects. And an example is the Bratzler Group. They go through a design process of several stages, ranging from 50 to 75 different steps. And once they start to use Sustainable Minds, they learned quickly that they could use Sustainable Minds for different purposes, with different levels of detail, from day one on, and then later to the final design, in about 3, 4, 5 different places in their design process. A really good example on how you can use Sustainable Minds. And then we see educational facilities. It's a group of educational facilities, universities around the world that we're working with and that are using our software. And the idea, the beauty of a slide like this is that it doesn't just look pretty, it also represents a very broad range of different faculties, ranging from very technical faculties, we need data, engineering, material science, to business-oriented faculties like Presidio, to design faculties like RISD. All these different universities and different faculties in different programs for different students getting benefits from using Sustainable Minds. So this is becoming almost universal. Everybody needs to know something about this, and Sustainable Minds is a great way to get started. We have a pretty big initiative around universities, represented by some of the educational webcasts that we're doing. And there's a series going on, just like we're doing this bi-weekly webcast. We're also doing guest lectures, customer webcasts, and an educational webcast. So just keep watching out. If you go online and you look this up on our blog, there are replays of some of the ones we've already had. And they're very good. Now, a different way of looking at who we're working with different manufacturers of building products, contract furniture, and so on. Also consumer products, outdoor gear, toys, houseware, apparel, but also businesses and business to business like medical and scientific devices and industrial electric and electronic equipment. And this list is growing over time. Like I said, the more customers we have, the bigger our database grows, and the more industries can work with Sustainable Minds. When we asked our clients, why are you working with Sustainable Minds, or why did you jump on this journey, they give us different answers. I think it's honest in that environmental performance metrics is an emerging criteria for product development, just along with things we already have been doing for a while, like functional performance, cost, aesthetics, safety, etc. And they're telling us that they're real business drivers and that there's real market demand for this type of innovation and environmental performance metrics. They're external drivers, and sometimes in resources. Resource depletion is driving up cost. Also predictability of getting your supply shipments in. Sometimes we're running short, and that's difficulty, that's a risk, and that's an externality that you'd like to take control of. Other companies operate on a global scale and then deliver products in Europe, get faced with regulation in the European Union, think of hazardous metals and electronics, and that has transformed the global marketplace because electronics get shipped over a global marketplace. But we see it closer to home as well, sometimes voluntarily, sometimes compliance-based, sometimes regulatory. Think of places like British Columbia, California. There are also companies that say, we've had some bad experiences and we don't want to run into those anymore. And they're environmental performance related. Think about the lead-tainted toys from Barbie. But there are other examples. It's just one of them. If you don't communicate about what your goals are in delivering a sustainable, high environmental performance product to your customers, and you don't inform your supply chain how you want to do that, what you want from them, and if you don't communicate, you don't know what you get, and you don't know what you're selling. So establishing a good relationship with your supply chain, business to business, is a very important element of this. There are internal drivers. Reputation, greener brands are raising the competitive bar. Where 5 years ago you could say this product can be recycled, real claims that you see right now are this product includes 10% post-consumer recycled content and 20% post-industrial recycled content. And it's been third-party certified, and it's following the FTC guidelines on green product claims and labels. So it's getting more quantitative, it's getting more verified, the science is getting tighter. A beautiful thing about talking to the business drivers of our customers is that they say most of our innovation today comes from eco-design, comes from looking at our current portfolio, our current products, and see how we can make them greener, and see how we can make them less toxic, and see how we can make them use less resources that are about to be depleted, etc., etc. How can our products use less water or electricity during the use phase? This is shown up as important. So companies are expanding their view on the full life cycle of their products. The companies sustainable minds to create revenue, and we're seeing more and more products being launched into the market that actually are new products and they have new revenues. And one example of that thinking here is what you see here is people refurbishing some large-scale equipment from Caterpillar. They took old machines back when they started taking it back, when they were selling new big equipment, piece of equipment to large contractors. They refurbished them and they sold them back to the market. And it turned out that there were different clients buying up the refurbished equipment. You can figure it out. It's the not large contractors, but one level below that. They couldn't afford a new one. They can afford this refurbished one. So new market, new revenue. So overall, we're seeing that innovation is a driver and it gets you to lower costs, increase revenues. Companies that make it a goal will gain competitive advantage, which means you need to get to work and you need to get new knowledge, look at your processes, look at new tools, and how to operationalize this opportunity. Now, when you start to think about this, you have to remember we're going to show you software that can help you on this journey, but it's never just software that helps you solve complex business problems. It's required knowledge, skills, process, and it can be enabled by software. And we can help you along the journey to get started, and hence we have our Getting Started series of services. To just make a few fundamental points of how we're thinking and how we're training our clients to think is a few starting points on what makes our product so unique. So to shift to an environmentally sustainable design, we want you to focus on the full life cycle, and we want you to look at the life cycle implications and the life cycle mindset when you are in your early stage of design. So if you think about the ramification in your raw materials, materials manufacturing, product manufacturing, transportation, distribution, use, recycling, and end-of-life disposal perhaps. So it's life cycle thinking. We want you to start as quickly, as early as possible in your redesign or new design process. When you start making decisions, you're starting to lock in and lose degrees of freedom to change things up. You see that with cost in the top graph. The same is true for environmental performance. And when you're later in your design stage, it's really difficult to go back and make dramatic and drastic changes because you've already locked in so many product features or supply chain or cost statements, etc., etc. So start as early as possible. Use a tool that can give you, with limited information, a screening result that gives you the hotspots, the items you would have to look for most, and they'll identify for you the areas of improvement where if you change something there, you're most likely to end up with a much better result. So start as early as possible, go through your design process, reiterate, make it more concise, precise, just like you do with your cost statements. You can use this for all those stages. Another column in our software is that we want you to think along what we call an eco-design strategy wheel. Just like a product life cycle with raw material extraction for use and then end of life, maybe there's material recycling, maybe there's component reuse, maybe there's even product reuse. All those stages in the life cycle are entry points for creating greener products. And if you do the assessment in Sustainable Minds and you see that out of these 7 stages, 1, 2, 3 are most impactful, you go look at innovation, low impact materials, and optimized manufacturing, and see what eco-design strategies you can apply to reduce the overall impact over the entire life cycle. Now we can expand on these. All these 7 chapters, life cycle phases, have more detailed eco-design strategies. We have a learning center. Once you sign up to our software, you can get access to what we call our learning center. It's a textbook, really, over 150 pages with relevant information around eco-design, how to do Sustainable Minds LCA, but also these strategies. And all these strategies are tailored and laid out there. Now, these are strategies that work for other people. That doesn't mean they work for you, but they give you an idea and can invite you to change things up in your product and your design. Now, here's an exercise that you can do just to get your head around the eco-design wheel. What you see is the result of a 10-minute brainstorm, looking at 2 products in the market and saying, well, which eco-design strategies can we associate with, for example, the cradle-to-cradle chair from Herman Miller? If we were to redesign that, which eco-design strategies could we have applied in there? And what we learned from that is that innovation occurs when multiple strategies are used for multiple stages during the life cycle. Yes, Richard, I did indeed say that there is a 150-page strategy guideline and document that you can find online inside our subscription. The next column that Sustainable Minds is using is that the science of life cycle assessment is included. And life cycle assessment, LCA, gives you the opportunity to objectively quantify environmental performance metrics and do that over the entire life cycle of a product or a service and include as many impact categories as science allows us to quantify. So it's not just manufacturing, it's the entire life cycle. It's not just the hole in the ozone layer, it's all environmental impact categories. And it gives you numbers. So when you can measure it, you can benchmark it. When you can benchmark it, you can start to improve it. It's described in the ISO 40040 series, 14,000 series on environment, 40,040 series on life cycle assessment. And just like any good practice, our software and LCA use the following 4 steps. Start to think about why you're doing the assessment, what you want to learn. So it's the goal and scope definition. Then it's to think about, well, what data do I need to satisfy those goals to be able to answer those questions. Once you have that, you implement that data in the software. The software takes care of what we call the impact assessment. It's changing your data on materials, energy, transportation, data that you know, into an impact statement that includes global warming, carbon footprint, acidification, et cetera, et cetera. And in Sustainable Minds, we're using a single score indicator, so you get one number, and that's where you start to compare. And if you want to get more details, you can drill down and look at the individual components. That's when you get to the 4th stage, interpretation. Here's where you start to look at your results, and here's where you start to reap the benefits of all your work. Here's where you will learn what the hotspots are, the largest contributors, in your carbon footprint and your overall environmental performance. And here's where you start to think about, okay, so now I know where to focus, where if I were to be able to find a change that I could make and implement, how can I now then go back to my model, copy it, redesign it, and benchmark it and compare it and see whether my idea actually ended up being a greener product. So that's the exciting stage. Now the process is captured here. You fill in what's on the left, materials, processes, energy, consumables, transportation, end of life. And the software, through a series of steps, translates that into an impact statement. Going back to the actual impacts, for example, you select electricity. Electricity is using fuels. Fuels have to be dug up somewhere, transported, maybe refined, cleaned up, and they are burned, their emissions, all those impact points of energy, waste, water, emissions, they're in our software. So when you select electricity, that's done for you. And the software also takes care in translating that into an impact statement using impact categories, and in the end looking at damages on human health, natural environment, and natural resources. Now, to sum that up, we have 10 impact categories that we'll look at in sustainable mines. You see them on the right. They're based on the most used Tracy methodology in Northern America. We use normalization and weighing guidelines from NIST. We're constantly improving our database and our impact factors and CO2 equivalent values. These are the numbers that you see in our software, and they're based on professional licensed software, custom data that we create with our customers, and data from the US LCI database from NREL. So trusted sources, the best available science for you. In our Learning Center as well, Chapter 5, there's a chapter on our methodology. Our methodology report has been reviewed by Rita Schenk, Chair Lady of the American Center for Life Cycle Assessment, Tom Gloria, and has been found ISO 14040 compliant. So we're proud of that. And if you want to read up on that, where we get our numbers, here's the science. You can download the report and have at it. Now, what we see in the market is that companies that are thinking about jumping on this journey are realizing that instead of feeling green or looking green, now it's about being green. So it's moving from an informal investigation to a corporate initiative. And so measuring and reporting is becoming a requirement of doing business. So it's no longer an option. This is something we have to get our wrap our heads around. So what are you to do? Well, our three-step medicine includes decide you need to do this and then learn how to do it. Use Sustainable Mine software, for example, to start benchmarking your products and processes and to learn where most impact occurs and where you can make the best changes. And in order to do that, leverage new technology. And we'll talk about the technology in a little bit. What we see happening in different companies, in different design departments, different research departments, is that people are trying to find the answer to the question, well, if I want to use a tool, which tool should I be using? And I've heard about life cycle assessment professional tools, I heard about CAD-ins, and now I'm looking at sustainable mines, and which one should I be using? Now, full life cycle software like Gavi and Sumer Pro is for LCA professionals. So if you want to become an LCA professional, have everything at your hands, then that's maybe the software you need to do, and they're really good for full LCA and EPDs. If you're a designer and you just want a quick fix, then the CAD plugins maybe can help you during optimization into smaller increments when you have your design almost ready. But what we'd like to feel and say is that sustainable mines can be used in all these four stages that you see here. Benchmark your current products, ideation through the eco-design strategies, where you can find bigger increments and improvement, and do a couple of iterations in your LCA, and then wrap it up, polish it up, and optimize with smaller increments. Now, we specifically designed sustainable mines so you can do all these things. And results from a full LCA can be fed into sustainable mines, and results from sustainable mines can be fed into a full LCA. So we try to be as flexible and modular as possible. Now, when you're a manufacturer, it's not just about environmental performance software. It's also PLM, it's design software, CAD, it's ERP, it's all of them. And we're trying to make sure that whatever we do with you is using the best data and the best software and try to make it as interconnected as possible. Now, that's not easy, and it's also not all of it. This is about you. This is about how you do this. This is cultural, it's organizational, who should do this, and why are we doing this, and how are we doing this when we decide we need to be doing this. So it's also a process, a workflow problem. Now, we work with a lot of different people in different departments. Typically, we say that anybody who is involved in making decisions about how to make products can benefit from using sustainable mines. And here you see different people from innovation, sustainability, environmental health and safety, marketing, through supply chain managers, and they all have their say in how to make the products. And they do that at different stages during the development process. So there are different people that need different data, that have different inputs while you're going through this process. And what we're trying to do with Sustainable Minds, doing some of our Getting Started programs, is help you sort out and sort through that process so that it all becomes seamless and you don't have to go back rediscover the data that somebody else already used, actually make this team work. So when you start to work with us, and you want to know how to figure out your workflow, then we can come in, do a workshop with you, work through some pilots, and ask you questions like you see on this slide. First, most important, what are your objectives? If you know what your objectives are, who should be responsible for making it happen? And when you look at your product development process, when should you have this available, this data, so you can make the right decisions? And then how do you measure environmental performance? How do you quantify it? What are your key performance indicators? How do you know what matters most? If you know all that, what type of decisions are you going to be making? So how will the results implement and affect your business objectives? And then if you know all that, then it's like, okay, now how to do this? And then the question is, well, how can software help us optimize the knowledge and the process that we need to put in place? So that's what we do at Sustainable Minds. We want to create awareness, educate you, get you to action, so that you can do exactly that. When you look at using Sustainable Minds, we see a lot of people use Sustainable Minds for different use cases, but the biggest one we see is that people use it to benchmark existing products, packaging, sub-assemblies, etc., all to identify where in the life cycle the greatest impacts occur, what the cause is, and if you know that, you know where real improvements can be made. Examples that are product innovation and R&D to identify efficiently and credibly breakthrough opportunities, how to set environmental performance targets. If you've done your benchmarks, you know what numbers are relevant to your products, and then you can say, okay, we want to start to reduce that over time, so you can set your ambitions. You can respond to customer reporting requirements, alternative assessment, and we work with customers. They're getting more and more questions from their customers and trying to find a way how to answer all that, and trying to find a way to bring that into a framework so that they're all together starting to make sense. And the last one, if you take LCA science a step further, you want to actually declare values in the market. There are things called environmental product declarations. Working with Sustainable Minds really prepares you and helps you prioritize and report on what matters most. So you educate yourself. If groups of industry come together and define the rules that have to be put in place to actually develop these EPDs. Some of our customers are using Sustainable Minds to do what-if scenarios. And the best example here is feasibility and logistics. A lot of people looking at packaging, distribution, take-back programs, doing what-if scenarios. And we sometimes help customers with that. And we've worked with customers where we set up 40 different what-if scenarios to identify some parameters of, does it make sense to ship it out and take it back? If we take it back, should we make it more durable? Does the material investment really make sense from an environmental performance perspective, plus the additional transportation as compared to just tossing it away every time? So you can set up what-if scenarios for that. You can do that in your manufacturing, your logistics, your use case, etc. So you can define which parameters are actually driving your environmental performance. And if you know those, then you can start to think about, well, if these three are the most important ones, what can we do to do our best? Number three, some people use Sustainable Minds to win new business. If you know what your performance is and you want to share that with your customers, and they've been buying certain products from you, now you've modeled it, now you know the environmental performance, you also know other products that you've benchmarked, and know that they're better. Why wouldn't you propose to sell those that are better and actually use Sustainable Minds to show them why? The fourth one is to visualize environmental performance data. How do you communicate these results? And we have some great examples of how customers are using that. So if you're interested in how you can transform it to how you could communicate and set up a strategy, then just reach out to support and we can talk to you about that. And the last thing we do a lot, number 5, is work with you and your team to start to define the process, the people, the team, train you to use Sustainable Minds so you can get started and integrate life cycle thinking and get to action. And it's wonderful to do that. We come out to your place, we work with your team, we actually interact and help you get started fast in this journey instead of you having to rediscover everything we already have implemented. When you sign up to a subscription, you get 3 things. You get our software, you get our database, you get our collaboration utility. You can work with different people from different places. It's all in the cloud. So it's really easy to work on a global scale or just at different facilities in the US. There's a Learning and Knowledge Management Center. That is the resource. It's about 150 pages long. And there's the community where users are sharing experiences. So if there's something useful in there, you can start to implement that. Somebody else has already figured it out for you. And some of these conversations are really good conversations. A few pointers before we dive into the demo. What you see here is numbers. You see on the left different concepts. You see numbers pop up. You see green numbers, red numbers. Green is better. Red is a worse performance. What Sustainable Minds offers is eco-concept modeling with real-time LCA-based results. Once you've set up your reference, it's usually quite easy to copy it, implement some changes based on your eco-design strategies, and see how they match up. And usually you go through a software implementing singular eco-design strategies, one by one, by one, by one. Then you see which ones are actually improving your environmental performance, and then you start to layer those winning ones together and see if they together create a winning concept, and then you can declare them as final, and you can base your presentation or your pitch or however you want to report that on that series of steps. The second thing we want to tell you is that there's no such thing as a green product. So we're always using resources or material or energy or transportation. In the current economy, it's really difficult to get to zero. So we want you to get better. And so it's all about comparisons. So start your benchmark, do some re-engineering, remodel it, and see how much better you can get. When you start to work with our software, you start to look at our material database. Sometimes you cannot easily find our data. Then you go to our data browser. Sometimes you looked in the data browser and still can't find the data, but that could very well be true. When we work with different types of customers, usually it takes 1 or 2 projects for you to understand what you can do with Sustainable Minds. And if you work with us, you can ask us questions where you say, hey, we're missing this data, and we need that to complete our models. Now, it could very well be, if you ask us that question, if we say, oh, we have that data, it's just not in the software yet, and we'll upload it for free, and then you can use it tomorrow. Sometimes it takes a bit more work, and then we talk about custom impact factors. If you've seen an LCA report that you want to integrate it, and then we have to work that through our methodology. If you want specific supply chain data for some of your vendors, we can give you questionnaires, help you develop that data. Maybe it's even your data. If you have a specific machine or tool or something that you do that you want to have data for and that you want to model in Sustainable Minds. Now, it's really easy to ask for the impact factors, and I'll talk to you about that in a little bit. If it doesn't take much time, we'll do it for free. If it takes a bit more time, then we make that part of your support package or set up a small service arrangement. And this is how we grow our database almost on a weekly basis, because we do that with other customers as well. If your boss or your company is interested in looking at return on investment, we can make that part of how we work with you. We'll look at cost savings, value creation, and we've never met a situation where we could not make this round and positive. And so if this is of interest to you, we can help you get story straight. So let's go online. Let's have a look at the actual software. You go to www.sustainableminds.com. All kinds of relevant information here, but what we're doing today is we're signing into our software. And when you do that, you'll see a home page. projects page and a Learning Center tab. On the page, you see here, set up a new project, you can get started modeling right away, but also browse the sustainable minds. And so when you click on that, and I just talked to you about that, this is an overview of all our materials, all our processes, all our use phase consumables, all our transportation and end-of-life processes, and you can browse through this. And so this list, quite a long list, and it's growing, like I said, almost by the week. What you also see in here is that when you model in sustainable mines, we try to make it as easy as possible for you. So, for example, if you work with aluminum and you want to manufacture that, then we've created a pretty long list of different processes that you can associate with aluminum, like extruding and machining, arc welding, sheet rolling, spot welding, etc., etc. These are predefined. If you see something, if there's something missing, you can tell us which associations you want to have. But once you're in our software, you can see why this is relevant and easy to do, to use. So I'll show you that in just a sec. Here's the center, and the textbook, like I said, about 150 pages long. Why sustainable mines, how to conduct a sustainable mines LCA, all about eco-design and LCA and how they work together, all the different eco-design strategies and the sustainable mines impact assessment methodology. Pretty large resource for you. Really recommend reading chapter 2 before you do your first project. And when I go to the project step and I want to set up a new project, there's lots of information I can fill out, but there's basically only two things that you have to fill out. You have to give it a name. You can fill out project information, etc. You can fill out goals that you want to have within this project. You can fill that out. It works really well if you fill all of that out. There's a functional unit. It's important to understand what this does. All the results are benchmarked, so compared to each other. So they need a unit to be able to compare each other. So what we do is we want you to focus on how much service is actually being delivered to the user of your service or product. And so a typical functional unit can be 1 year of use. And then when you start to model your products, you can say, okay, well, my product can do 5 years or 10 years, but all the different products will be compared on the 1 year of use basis. You can change that to whatever, and there's information on why and how and different considerations. So we haven't changed anything yet, and we're ready to start adding our first concept. And the concept means we're actually going to model a BOM. So we're going to model a project, and we're going to say it's going to last 5 years. So here's the functional unit again. And I'm saying, okay, now modeling is 5 years. One of the eco-design strategies could be to make another project that will last 7 years and see how it compares. A little more material here, maybe a replacement there. Where are we now? We're now in the BOM, the material part of building a product. And what I'm selecting here now is a plastic PET. I'm going to select 1 pound, and I'm going to show you how the process associations work. Click on the aluminum that we just saw, production mix, putting 1 pound, and I want to add that to the add a process. Then I see the list that you just saw in the data browser, and I could say, okay, well, I want it to be extruded, and I want to do it for full pound. So now I'm going to get an extruded aluminum product that's actually. So now I've selected 2 materials and 1 material with extrusion, and you see already results showing up. Total is 50. We express our results in millipoints. 1 point is the average impact per person in America per year for the entire economy. So that's your lion's share of the U.S. economy. So 1,000 millipoints is 1 point. So this is 50. And you see that most comes from the aluminum and then the PET fibers. And extrusion adds just a little bit. And the same is almost true for the carbon footprint, although the aluminum and the PET are quite similar, while the millipoints are quite different. Now, we can add a transition. We can import a BOM. If you already have a BOM in another different software, we can import template for you. We can add different transitions, shipping the parts to your facility or shipping the product to your customer. This one is going to China, say Europe. Let's put in 5,000 miles. Because of the use phase, we can model different consumables during the use phase. So transportation is in there now. We can say, okay, well, I wanted to use some electricity or some water or other consumables. Let's add a power use for you today here. Excuse me. So we go to power use. I'm looking at electricity. I want to make it really clean, so I'm going to get wind power, and I'm going to select 10 kilowatt hours. Now remember, all of this relates to the years that we just modeled. So you need to include total consumed year, and then there's end of life, or you can say where it ends up in landfill, etc., etc. And then we're ready to start with results. Now let's look at results from a project that we've pre-modeled for you. I'll go back to our projects, look at a more complete project, looking at a toast project. Look at some of the results. Let's go back to concepts. So I'm going to compare one. Okay. So there's a reference toaster that we made. And there's a redesign that we made based on this reference, including a strategy for disassembly. What you see here is designed for disassembly, which is point 2. And you see here the reference house is also 5. And so we're getting much better, significantly better, and the old one was significantly worse. Now I want to know where that's coming from, because it has all kinds of parts, all different processes. And what you see here that in the original design, end of life for steel was important, incineration, there's processes for milling, there's the use phase. And what happened when designing for disassembly is that we're basically taking the end-of-life landfill and combustion out of its life cycle, and we now see that the most impactful one is the processing and the use phase. So very much a good strategy here, it seems, to be realizing some of these high and intensive parts. Now, do we see the same looking at the carbon footprint? Not quite. We went from 0.23 to 0.24. So they're about the same, but the carbon footprint basically hasn't changed. And the reason for that is the carbon footprint comes from the use phase. So that's the power use. So if you wanted to look at making a final here, which suggests combining looking at lower use during the use phase with this design for disassembly. And you can see that here as well. When you look at life cycle stages, the impacts per life cycle stage, end of life was most impactful, and then the new one, that's the manufacturing. So basically we've taken end of life out of the equation. And if we look at the carbon footprint, we see that most impactful was the use phase, and then manufacturing, and not so much end of life. So this has not really much been impacted. You actually see a small increase, maybe from some additional processing or transportation. Now, when you're ready with this, you can download all the results and get a full breakdown. You can use to manipulate that any way you want to. If you want to reutilize and capture these graphs and the software that you're using, then you can just click on Printable View. A pop-up will be generated, and you can just copy and paste it into your application. We're trying to make it as easy as possible for you to report on these different things. Now, when we look at how you can get started in doing this, we have different services that we have available for you. The 4 that we sell the most are what we call the Getting Started programs, with a 45-day proof of concept, product benchmark, a pilot program, and a strategy roadmap. They're all summarized in this slide with way too much information, but you can kind of see that these are all limited in days, not more than 60, 90 days. They're limited in scope, and they work for different purposes. If you want to find out whether you want to use sustainable mines, you do a 45-day proof of concept. If you want a quick answer but don't have the internal resources available, don't want to train your people and do everything yourself, maybe you do a product benchmark with us. And we'll model a product for you, and we work with your team to kind of understand where your hotspots are and how can you start to make improvements. We have a pilot program. If you want people to get started, get trained, start working on your team process, and actually manage some of that. So we have these different getting started programs. The one we sell the most is our pilot program. It's about implementing greener into your product development. And just to give you an idea what's in there is, if you sign up for this program, we help you and your team to get started. So we train the trainer and becoming super users using sustainable mines. We also determine who needs to be involved in terms of data, in terms of engineering, et cetera, et cetera. We look at when this needs to happen and during the product development process. We do 1 or 2 projects with you where we can identify the lifecycle greatest impacts, include some of the top eco-design strategies for improvement and innovation, so you kind of can start to see the potential of using sustainable mines. Start to draft a financial ROI and help you deliver a rollout plan to get buy-in from management and all other groups involved to actually start to operationalize greener into your product development process. All of this starts with subscription packages. You can buy single users, multi-users, department innovation bundles. Database can be private in the cloud or just our public database. We have educational packages. More and more universities are buying a site subscription where it's just unlimited in terms of how many classes, how many students, how many professors, and when in the year. Just get one site license and you're good to go. Different universities are doing that and actually developing curriculum. You see in this slide. And again, like in the beginning of this webinar, it's a pretty wide array spread of different faculties that are working on this and actually integrating sustainable mines into their curriculum. And this is fantastic because all these students are getting to the market space. They know exactly what they need to do or where to find it. They can start integrating environmental performance metrics from day one on in their first job. We do a lot of training. We can do web-based or on-site training. On-site is much more fun. I get more out of it, we get more out of it, but you get much more out of it as well. But if you want to make it lean and mean, web-based will work for us as well. We have support packages where we render and deliver professional services. Sometimes people just want us to review a project. Sometimes people want us to look at data requirements, develop some custom data. Now they've modeled it, and they're looking at results. Are they looking at the right results, yes or no? Do we get the same conclusions, et cetera, et cetera. So basically just make sure that you're using sustainable mines in the right way and that you get the most out of sustainable mines. We have a customer data creation program. We talked about it a little bit. Where you look at a data browser. If you don't find data that you need, you fill out our template, which you see here at the bottom half. You can download that from our data browser. You fill that in, and we'll have a look. And like I said, we can then tell you quite quickly whether we can help you for free or whether we need to set up a small server. Now, we've been doing work with lots of different people. I just want to touch base quickly on a few of them. Here's a flooring company that looked at sustainable mines. It only took them half a day to look at the material aspects in their carpet and to see what choices they could be making in terms of greener product innovation. And quite quickly they decided that recycled carpet would give them the most direct performance gain. So they started a feasibility study on availability, technical performance, and customer appreciation. Here's a company that was building shipping reels, the big cables that you see, holders that you see alongside the road. They're wood. They said, well, they're so big, they hardly ever come back. Can we make them foldable and we can take them back, and maybe we can reuse them more often. And they found a way to reuse them 36 times, dramatically reducing their life cycle impact, combining traditional wooden material, but also with some plastic components. So kind of like snip, snap, could just fold it and ship it back, and it wouldn't take up any space. Here's a company that we worked with a bit more intensively. We developed custom impact factors, we trained a trainer, and now they're capable and able to, with our database, model quite large industrial equipment and integrate decisions around maintenance and warranties in their design and environmental policy. Here's an example of a what-if scenario study. What you see on the right are two shipping scenarios with a reusable packaging for a large-scale IT hardware manufacturer. And the question was, well, does more reuse or several reuse rounds make sense, or is there an optimal number? So we did a couple of iterations. You see here a 2 times reuse versus 10 times reuse. And for the total impact, it makes total sense to reuse it more often. What you see at the bottom is then a snapshot there. That's part of the total impact, but just focusing on carbon footprint. And you see that there is actually a trade-off. You see that the makeup is different, the result is about the same, and what you see here is that the material aspects get written up over several life cycles, so that's good. But you need to do more transportation, and it compensates the positive effects there. So if you wanted to work about a climate change strategy, this is not a winning strategy. So what I've hoped to show you today is that so you can use sustainable minds, so you can understand how to design greener products right from the start. That our software and data and methodology platform can give you credible results. You can benchmark and compare them within our software, and that you can collaborate anywhere with teams in different places. Really easy. It's all in the cloud. You never install anything, and then it's affordably priced. If you look at different LCA solutions, then we have a pretty affordable pricing schedule for you. Now with that, we've come to the end of our webinar, so let's see if there's some questions that have come in that we can go through, so we can wrap this up. Let's see. Yeah, there's one question here. Can you give us an example of a customer that successfully used sustainable minds? Yeah, I can tell you about another one. It's also good then to show you on our website. We have a part on our website called Customers, and then there's Customer Stories. People talk about sustainable minds, and one of the customer stories is from Yakima Products. They attended a workshop, general workshop, and here's Chris, and they were redesigning a forklift bike mount that goes on top of your roof, and you can put your bike on it. They redeveloped and redesigned it using a software after the training, and they sent us a screenshot, so they were able to reduce, use fewer parts, less complicated manufacturing, left out a few materials, and we're able to reduce the environmental footprint as well by about 15%, and they send us a screenshot. We love to see these things. So let's wrap up with that invitation. Please get started using Sustainable Minds. Give us a call. See whether you want a private webcast or latch onto the custom Getting Started programs, or just work with Sustainable Minds and tell us what you found, what your questions are, and maybe you have some success stories you want to share with us, and we can include that in a future webinar. And with that, we've come to the end. Thank you for your attention, and hopefully we'll hear from you soon. You have a great day. Bye-bye.